Welcome to the lecture for Chapter 2, The Evolution of Public Relations. Chapter 2 continues to provide a foundation for what public relations is by showing how the field developed. You might not have known it before you started to read the chapter, but people over 2,000 years ago used PR tactics to create publicity and spread their message. The textbook outlines the historical periods by providing major figures from eras extending from ancient times through today, and ends by discussing current trends. Let's begin by taking a look at the foundational periods and people that helped establish the field. We'll begin with the ancient times. Over 1,000 years ago, before public relations or propaganda were even words, historical figures began utilizing the first PR techniques. Julius Caesar was the first politician to publish a book. He held parades for himself when he returned from battle, and he put his image on coins so citizens could see his image even if they had never seen him in person. With the spread of Christianity, the apostles were regarded as some of the best utilizers of PR tactics. For example, the apostles Peter and Paul used speeches, letters, and staged events to spread Christianity when it was in its early formation. And finally, the Olympics were used to enhance the prestige of athletes, and the event portrayed athletes as heroes. Even today, we still see images of athletes in the Olympics portrayed as heroes. In the Middle Ages, there were several other examples of PR tactics being utilized, primarily by the Catholic Church. For example, Pope Urban II used propaganda to encourage people to join the Crusades, and Pope Gregory XV established the College of Propaganda to propagate the faith. Bankers in the 16th and 17th century utilized the concept of corporate philanthropy by sponsoring artists to create pieces of art. And even in colonial America, the settling of the U.S. produced several opportunities to frame the country in a specific, mostly positive manner to England. Sir Walter Raleigh sent glowing reports of his progress, even though he was living on a swamp-filled Roanoke Island. PR was used to raise funds for the country's earliest universities, like Harvard and Columbia, and Sam Adams used PR tactics to hold the Boston Tea Party, something many regard as the greatest and best-known publicity stunt of all time. The 1800s was referred to as the golden age of press agentry. We should take a second here to explain what press agentry is. Press agentry is one of four models used to explain the practice of PR. There is a clear explanation of these four models on page 52. Please take a few minutes to read and understand the models. The 1800s was a time that the first model, press agentry, was widely used. And what this means is that PR was conducted using one-way communication that used persuasion and manipulation to get audiences to do what the organization wanted. We see this model utilized by figures such as P.T. Barnum. P.T. Barnum was known as the master of the pseudo event and was known as the first true PR practitioner. He created images and figures such as Tom Thumb, Fiji Mermaid, and Swedish Nightingale. He promoted these figures through small towns all over the United States to have people come out and pay money in order to see them. Another way PR was utilized during this time was through the westward movement. PR was used to promote the westward expansion and frame different areas within the U.S. as great places to live. Some were completely over the top, like the description of Nebraska on page 42, and some were more realistic. They all, however, tried to portray differing areas as great places to live. A third way was through politics and social movements. During the 1800s, there was a rise in political and social activism. We found the first presidential press secretary, who was Amos Kendall, for President Andrew Jackson. Seneca Falls, the first women's rights convention, was held. The Women's Christian Temperance Union and the Anti-Saloon League used PR to ban alcohol. Ida B. Wells was an anti-segregationist who used letters, books, and speeches to help sway public opinion. and John Muir was an environmentalist who ran a campaign to get congressional support to create Yosemite. Finally, PR was also utilized in early corporate initiatives. The most well-known one is the Macy's Christmas window and the Thanksgiving parade that they still hold today. 1900 to 1950 is known as the Age of Pioneers. Here we see a shift from the press agentry model to a more fact and information-based strategy. Why? Their textbook offers two reasons. First, the press agent model didn't fit the operations and objectives of large corporations that were growing in the U.S. And second, the new field of PR attracted journalists who were more comfortable with objectivity and the dissemination of information. There were several major figures during this time that the textbook outlines, such as Ivy Lee, Edward L. Bernays, and others such as George Creel, Leon Baxter, and Eleanor Lambert. I encourage you to read through the chapter to see how these people added to the field. The time period of 1950 to 2000 is referred to as when public relations comes of age. This area sees huge growth in the field due to several factors. One major way was the growth of the economy after World War II. This growth of the economy made the PR industry explode. There are also major increases in urban and suburban populations. There was a growth of a more impersonalized society where people began to be represented by large corporations and big labor. There are also large scientific and technological advances like the discovery of cars and invention of computers. The communication revolution in mass media occurred during this time, and there was also a stronger focus on the bottom line of finances versus attention to individual people. All of these factors combine to help see the great need for public relations during this era. The textbook outlines two major trends that we see in the field today. The first is the number of women in the field, which statistics show there are about 70% women in the field. The increasing numbers of women started in the early 1980s, but reflects the national trend of more women in the workforce. Current efforts in the field are trying to recruit more men and minorities to have the field better reflect the U.S. population. A second trend is that today, PR is seen more as relationship management. The emphasis today is to create and maintain relationships between organizations and various publics. The end of Chapter 2 outlines 10 current developments that we see in the field today. The first is that PR functions in a multicultural world. As the United States population continues to become more varied with people of different backgrounds, we need practitioners that have a sensitivity and knowledge that they can send to multiple audiences. There's also a development of a recruitment of minorities to have the field better reflect the United States population at large. There's a strong public demand for transparency. There's also an expanded role for public relations. PR is going to continue to play a large role in executing integrated communication campaigns as corporations continue to see the need for PR. There's an increased interest in corporate social responsibility, especially after the collapse of Wall Street and the current recession that the U.S. is in. There's an increased emphasis on measurement to make sure that PR professionals are doing what they say they are doing in their campaigns. There's an emphasis to manage the 24/7 news cycle. Because so much information is constantly being put out to publics, it's important for PR professionals to know what's in the news cycle. There's a continued growth of digital media. There's an outsourcing to PR firms. And what this means is that many companies now, instead of having PR professionals on their staff, instead are using outside firms to come in to help their corporation. And finally, the field continues to see a need for lifelong professional development.